Hey, so guys, Roxcall here, and because of a couple of requests by y'all, we're going to be talking about our Robo Death Horse friend, Orisa. Orisa is one of the newer additions to Overwatch 1 that got such a significant rework on the switch to the sequel. Her personality changed. In this video, we're going to be going into the history of Orisa to figure out if this rework was actually needed or was any good. Going all the way back to before Orisa's release, a lot of people thought her release was actually going to be Doomfist at first. This was mainly due to him being a long requested character being teased all the way back in Overwatch's release trailer. Eventually, Orisa started to get a bunch of teasers like on February 21st, 2017, where she was teased with an in-universe interview with Efi. After a bunch of little teasers like this, Orisa was released onto the PTR on March 2nd. Just in case you didn't know, the PTR, or Public Test Realm, was the place the devs originally tested new features / heroes that came into the game. Starting out with Orisa's main weapon back then, it was a fast machine gun like we have now, but instead of an overheat mechanic, the gun just had a crap ton of ammo. This was 200 at the time. On top of that, firing the gun slowed you by 50%, which is pretty crazy compared to the no slowdown weapon we have now. Fortify was pretty much the same as we have now with its damage reduction and stun prevention, but it did not give you overhealth. You also could get headshot during Fortify with this early version of Orisa. Next up is our first ability we don't have at all anymore, Protective Barrier. This was a projectile Orisa could fire off her arm that would turn into a shield whenever it hit the ground. The shield would last 20 seconds, had 900 health, and had a curved look to it. Another Overwatch 1 Orisa exclusive ability you may have actually seen if you played the recent April Fool's patch is Halt. This would cast a green orb from her weapon that would stop if you hit a hard surface, or midair by pressing the same button again. Any enemies near this would get pulled towards it, a sort of mini graviton surge. Her ultimate was completely different then too. This was called Supercharger, or as me and many others called it back then, Bongo. The Bongo was a device Orisa threw on the ground. Whenever it had line of sight on teammates, it would give them a plus 50% damage boost for its 15-second duration. This device had 200 health and could be destroyed by enemies if they were able to reach it. And yeah, this was pretty much Overwatch 1 Orisa. From what I can tell, she didn't get any noticeable changes from the PTR to the live game. This was even though Orisa was actually seen as pretty weak by many at the time. My guess on why she was so weak is because of the dive meta being so dominant. Orisa was obviously a poke tank back then, so she most likely got destroyed by these dive compositions. She was in this weak state all the way until season 16 pretty much. Her patches from season 4 to 16 then were sort of small buffs over time that kept adding up. Like she first got a massive shield cooldown buff from 12 to 8 seconds in 2017, and on top of that some pretty big buffs to Fusion Driver and a pretty big quality of life change to her shield later on. This eventually led to the Orisa Hog meta. The main idea of this tank combo was using Orisa Halt to pull enemies in line of sight for the Hog to hook. Something important to mention about the older Halt was that it actually could pull people through walls and around corners. The devs did fix this eventually, I'm pretty sure, but I can't seem to find the exact patch when it was fixed if I'm being honest. If any of you know which patch this was, feel free to let me know in the comments, but I'm fairly certain it was a thing for this meta. Anyway, this meta lasted for quite a bit as the devs were working on pushing out the Roll Q beta at the time. The devs did nerf Orisa's barrier cooldown by 1 second on its release to pull her out of the meta, but it didn't seem to work at all, especially since Roll Q came with the release of Sigma. This dude was an absolute powerhouse poke tank on release, and along with some strong supports to back him up like Baptiste and Brig, this made Orisa insert perfectly into what we call the double shield metas. The idea with this comp was to constantly replace the shields in front of you with Sigma and Orisa, since they had such high HP and short cooldowns. Then you would poke out the enemy team from a distance before they can even reach you with the high poke damage you could do with these tanks. On top of that, even if you got past the shields with let's say a dive composition, they had a support backline that would make it feel impossible to get on top of. Teams often ran supports like Bap and Brig, which could escape and live through dives pretty easily with their survivability and anti-dive cooldowns. They tried nerfing Orisa again and again to get her out of this meta, with increases to barrier cooldown, decrease in barrier health alongside compensation buffs to armor health and fortify, then a nerf to fortify, then some big nerfs on January 20th to her weapon damage and fortify cooldown, but then they went back on the weapon damage nerf, and then they nerfed Halt while going back on the armor health change. These all over the place changes did seem to finally get to Orisa eventually with those Halt and armor nerfs, as she was finally thrown out of the meta while Sigma stayed in around season 23. These nerfs were so hard on Orisa, she was actually seen as complete garbage by many after these. The devs did seem to try to attempt to make her decent again by buffing the weapon projectile speed, and of course going back on the armor health change again. Then a bit after they changed it so Orisa could no longer be headshot and fortify with a Halt cooldown buff a few months later. This was the final buff to Overwatch 1 Orisa. Again, these didn't seem to do too much, with the nerfs before just being so hard on Orisa. She could be inserted into double shield again every now and then, but heroes like Hog or Ball were usually more favored with Sigma in the final years of Overwatch's lifespan. With the release of Overwatch 2, the devs decided Orisa needed a rework. The reasoning they gave was that Orisa often lost close combat battles, and they wanted to delve into the African warrior fantasy more with this hero. Alongside her significant model changes, she was also the only reworked hero in Overwatch 2 that got a pretty significant personality change. In Overwatch 1, she was more of a light-hearted protector of Numbani, who was still learning the ropes being such a new creation. Overwatch 2 Orisa seemed to do really well and loves combat situations. Of course, with this personality change came a bunch of ability changes to the character. Starting out with her main weapon, it now has infinite ammo with an overheat mechanic. This builds the more you shoot, and if the overheat meter is ever built all the way up, you'll be stuck in a hefty animation. Her fortify stayed pretty much the same as mentioned before, but now it gives Orisa overhealth and slows heat generation on her weapon. Her shield got completely removed though, and got replaced with an ability called Javelin Spin. With this ability, Orisa spins a javelin in front of her that eats incoming projectiles. She also moves faster in the direction it's facing, and it has the ability to repeatedly boop enemies caught in its path. Her halt ability got replaced by an ability called Energy Javelin as well. This is a thrown projectile that damages, stuns, and boops back enemies upon impact, and does even more damage if they hit a wall. The final change ability was her ultimate. This is now called Terra Surge, which fortifies Orisa and pulls in enemies towards her with an area effect around her that slows enemies while slowly damaging them. You can charge this up as Orisa the longer you wait, and pressing primary fire has Orisa throw a spear into the ground for big impact damage. This reworked Orisa in the beta was actually seen as pretty weak by many, as she often got poked out by ranged DPS, and lost often in tank brawls to those like Zarya. She got a bunch of changes in the beta to try and bring up her strength in certain areas, while nerfing some things like her javelin and ability to be headshot and fortify. This still didn't seem to be enough, as they again made it so you couldn't be headshot and fortify, along with a javelin spin buff. After the beta, they continue with some buffs to her base health and javelin. As they said themselves, she is tough to balance and her win rate is too low. They continue with buffs to fall off range and Terra Surge. These buffs seem to have been too much, as the devs nerfed Fortify's health bonus a month later, while also nerfing her fall off range back to what it was. Then these nerfs seem to also be too much, as the devs started buffing her damage and fortify in the months ahead. I bet you couldn't have guessed, but these buffs were in fact too much. And she got Fortify nerfed again. Then guess what? She got a huge buff again that completely removed her damage fall off, and she pretty much became a meta must pick for a while after. This was only changed a few months later with some massive nerfs to Fortify and Javelin Spin, where she got knocked out of the meta and kinda remains a more niche pick to this day. The devs seem to be on the path of buffing her a bunch again, so I think it's safe to assume this pattern may repeat itself. I think to me personally, it's clear from looking at these patch notes the devs don't really know how to balance Orisa in both her Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2 forms. I don't blame them fully, as she is the tough one to balance, with her seeming to always be too strong or too weak in the meta. I'll get to my balance suggestions in a bit, but first I want to speak of course about the subject of this video. Was Overwatch 1 Orisa better than Overwatch 2 Orisa? I'm currently in the opinion that they both have been not that amazing, but Overwatch 2 Orisa has been slightly better to me. This is mainly due to the playstyle of Orisa in Overwatch 1 not being something I found to be fun to play as or against at the time. It was literally just sit behind a shield and poke at the enemy, with the only skilled part of his kit to me being that ult halt ability, which even then was not that crazy to use, as all you would really do is put it right above or to the side of a shield for you and your teammates to shoot pulled enemies. Playing against old Orisa wasn't that fun either, with her constantly shielding making her feel impossible to actually hit for a lot of heroes. Overwatch 2 Orisa at least has a more active frontline presence playstyle that I personally find a bit more enjoyable to play as than against. This doesn't mean I think it's the right move down the line, though, as this current Orisa seems to always fall into the trap of sitting in one place and holding her ground. She's easily one of the most difficult tanks to take down too, as she can cycle her sustain cooldowns extremely well. Her javelin spin and energy javelin abilities can really bully the enemy tank, which also can ruin the experience for the other side. How do we fix a hero that always seems to fall in the traps of being too strong, too weak, and unfun to play against then? My first suggestion would be to stop these blind buffs / nerfs currently, as those clearly don't seem to solve the issue. I think we need to first look at what exactly makes her so unfun to play against to possibly solve this, while also making sure the Orisa player can get value in the match as well. Note before I begin that any specific numbers I mention are very subject to change. They are mostly there to give an idea of what I would do with the changes. Starting off with her main weapon, I don't think this gun should have no damage fall off. I personally don't want to promote a poke playstyle with this hero, as this no damage fall off thing is something I don't think she should / needs to have. We'll keep it at 20 meters for now, as this is what it was before the damage fall off removal. Everything else about the main weapon seems fine to me, so we'll move on to the next ability, Fortify. I think this should be a tool used for Orisa to go in rather than pure survivability. So we are going to first remove that goofy slow that I never liked the idea of. All it does is promote the stand still and don't die playstyle more, which I don't want. Another nice playstyle I want to give Fortify is that it now powers up the damage on Orisa's gun for its duration. I'm thinking right now from 13 per bullet to 15. Then on top of that, a big nerf to her survivability in it by being able to headshot her again during Fortify. The idea here, as mentioned, is to have it as a tool to go in on the enemy team, rather than just sit in one place and survive. Next up we got our secondary fire ability, Energy energy javelin. Kinda simple and of just significantly reducing the hitbox size. The thing is just way too big right now, and way too easy to hit. It feels unsatisfying for both sides, as even hitting something as Orisa with it doesn't feel that great when the hits almost feel guaranteed. We could also increase the damage to compensate, but the devs already did that with the recent patch, so it might not be needed. Javelin Spin is our final normal ability here, and this one I've got a couple of changes in mind for. For the buffs, I think it should give you a lot more speed, like 70% up from 50%, and you should be able to gain that movement speed in any direction instead of just forward. I also want a cooldown reduction from 9 to 6 seconds. Then I want to give it the fat nerf of no longer being something that eats projectiles. The idea here is to again promote a more go-in playstyle with Orisa, but also make it feel like it has some sort of counterplay during its cast time. One of the most rough feelings as an enemy tank player is to be constantly booped by this thing while not even be able to shoot back at Orisa. This will make it so you can at least shoot back during its duration, while also giving Orisa a lot more movement options. The omnidirectional movement speed thing in particular is something I personally always wanted with Javelin Spin, as it always felt so awkward only getting that move speed going forward. The big cooldown buff is of course to compensate for no longer having the Matrix ability attached to it, as it is now a pure boop / mobility tool. Other than that, I think our ultimate Terra Surge is mostly fine. It's not a very high skill ultimate or anything, but I think its impact in a fight is interesting and good enough for what a tank ult should be. I don't want it to be a guaranteed kill ultimate, more of just something that forces important cooldowns from the enemy team, which I think it currently does perfectly. This is all just my opinion on the Robo Horse though. You can let me know yours in the comments. Also feel free to suggest what hero you want to see next too, and it may possibly feature your comment in the next video. Thank you all for the amazing support on this series as always. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.
Rock skull. All he wants to do is stream all night. Lobby full. Rock skull. Never gonna play with me, but it's alright.